later. Irving Berlin was often called the king of syncopation, but just what exactly does that mean? Music generally is right on the beat. So you would go, Mary had a, right on the beat. However, if you purposefully get yourself out of sync with the beat, Mary had, then that's syncopation. Now, syncopation is just one tool that a composer has. And like any tool, you know, build a fire and that can be something good or something terrible. Syncopation is more than just going meh, re, had. When it's done right, it should add life and add excitement to the melody. The best example of that is the music of Scott Joplin. Without syncopation, the entertainer would sound da, 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 but with syncopation, da, 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 and that delay, that coming in after the beat is what adds life to the melody. So it's not just doing it, but it's doing it right. Another trick, and this one's pretty obscure, is what notes you use and how those notes each have a certain personality. If I was a painter and I wanted to paint a painting that conveyed great energy or excitement or violence, what colors would I use? Red. But if I wanted to show serenity and peace, then what colors would I use? Now, this is somewhat common sense. People don't need to be great artists to figure this out. However, in music, the notes you choose also send a message. You all know do, re, mi. And let me bring up my cursor here. Do, re, mi. This note right here, mi, actually has a name. It's called the mediant, and it's given that name because it mediates between the tonic note, do, and the dominant note, so. It has a mediating quality that's very, very pleasant. I'm going to sing a song you all know, and I'm going to sing it with the mediant note by mistake, and it's still going to sound okay. Do, do, so, la, la, so, fa, fa, mi, re, re, mi. Sounds fine. Now, if I were to do that with any other note, it would clearly sound like a mistake. Do, do, so, la, la, so, fa, fa, mi, re, re, ti. You don't want to do that. As you can expect, the mediant note, because of that kind of sweet quality that it has, is used in a lot of songs that emphasize that mellowness. If you want to compose a song that has a pleasant mediating quality, create a melody that emphasizes the mediant note. It should come as no surprise that a lot of lullabies do that. And here's the melody. Mi, mi, so, mi, mi, so. You can see that 1, 2, 3, 4 of the first 6 notes are the mediant note. There are also countless children's songs, nursery rhymes, such as Jack and Jill went up the hill, or 3 blind mice, that either start on me, end on me, or have a melody that really emphasizes me. Now, this is a little weedy. I don't want to get into it. I could actually make a whole lecture on this, but just suffice it to say that there is something special about that note. And this will make more sense later on, I promise. All right, the last thing I want to talk about before the lecture actually begins is that music is not a spectator sport. Irving Berlin became very famous when stars like Bing Crosby recorded his songs, but Berlin was already famous long before there were movies, records, and radio. He became a wealthy man selling sheet music. His music predates modern electronics. It was meant to be brought home and sung. And it was meant to be shared with friends and loved ones. Now, do you think these people in this picture actually sound very good? And the thing is, they probably don't sound all that good, but that does not matter. They are singing together, and that is one of life's joys, and it's a joy that many of us have lost. I will put up the lyrics to some of Berlin's most famous songs during this lecture, and I really hope that you sing along with me. I am not a great singer, and I am a terrible piano player. This is not a concert, but this can be a virtual sing-along, which is what Irving Berlin intended. He did not write music that we think of today that is highly electronic and manipulated. He wrote music that was meant to be sung. Okay, it's time for the lecture. Let's get started. Birds do it, bees do it, even educated fleas do it. So is that a great Irving Berlin song? No, it's not. It's by Cole Porter. Berlin never would have written a song with Cole Porter's urbane sophistication or sly naughtiness. And Irving Berlin did not write with the level of rhythmic or harmonic complexity found in the music of the Gershwins. However, to say that his music is less sophisticated than his contemporaries would give you the wrong impression. He never wrote an opera like Gershwin. He did not go to Yale or Harvard like Cole Porter. Both. In fact, Irving Berlin barely made it through His music is elegant without pretension. It is understated, poetic, and direct. And I hope that by the end of today's lecture, you will agree with me that Berlin was a subtle genius. Berlin was born on May 11th, 1888, in a Russian shtetl. As you know from the last scene of Fiddler, during the pogroms, Jews were evicted from countless shtetls. But unlike Fiddler, the Berlins were not given 3 days to prepare. The Berlinstown, which may have been Tumen, but nobody knows for sure, was raided in the middle of the night. Cossacks came in on horseback and murdered most of the residents and then burned the town down. And that's why we actually don't know what Irving Berlin's hometown is. It was completely burned and destroyed, and there's no trace of it left. The only reason why the Berlins survived the night and why they were one of the few that did is because they found an irrigation ditch behind their home that was deep enough and wet enough to protect them from the flames and hide them from the terror. When they arrived in 1893, Israel Berlin was only 5 years old. They were among the refugee, yearning to breathe free, and they were eternally grateful to be out of the poverty and anti-Semitism of Tsarist Russia. Berlin was always thankful to be an American. So let's start today's lecture by singing what perhaps is Berlin's most famous song. Now, many of you are familiar with Kate Smith and her very rousing rendition of God Bless America. But if you can't sing like Kate Smith, you can still sing the song. It was written in 1918 as a sentimental ballad. However, because we were in the middle of World War I, there was already a plethora of patriotic songs flooding the sheet music racks, and Irving Berlin's publisher set it aside, refused to print it. The Kate Smith version came out one generation and one World War later, and it is of a very different style, not at all what Berlin had in mind. People who feel that God Bless America is a little bit too schmaltzy should keep the song's low-key origin in mind. So you're all on mute. You can sing as loud as you want, but if you choose, you can sing in a more subdued manner. But I do urge you to sing along. Let's sing God Bless America.
And I actually unmuted everyone, so they can sing along.
All right, well then, if everybody's unmuted, we'll give it an experiment. Usually when you sing on Zoom, everybody is a fraction of a second off, and it sounds disastrous. But, you know, we don't have a very large number of people here, so it would be fantastic if it works. So, Jonathan, I'll let you play it by ear. If it sounds like we're clashing, then you can unmute. Okay, but the thing is, I will not be unmuted. But like I said, not a concert. You're not here to listen to me. I'm going to get you started, but it's not a concert. Here we go. God bless America, and that I stand beside her, and guide her, and guide her from above, from the mountains
And Richter's thing.
prairies to the ocean, right before. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. All right. Well, I couldn't tell if you were singing along, but I sure hope you were. This poem by Emma Lazarus is, of course, found at the base of the Statue of Liberty. As I said, Berlin was eternally grateful for his life in America. He was among the millions of immigrants who never forgot the day that they sailed by the Statue of Liberty. At this time of divisiveness and this time of opportunistic historical amnesia, I think it is important to sing this song and sing it often. This may not be one of Berlin's most famous songs, but it should be. And if you do know it, please sing it with me now. And if you don't know it, because as I said, it's not one of Berlin's more famous songs, then you're in for a treat. Give me your tide, your pearl, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless tempest tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Now, at the beginning of this lecture, I said that Irving Berlin was often subtle and understated in his style. And this song is an excellent example of that. I'm just going to sing, give me your tired, it's all one note. You're poor, it just goes up one note. Your huddled masses, all again just one note, and then it just goes up one more. When you have lyrics that are this significant, you don't want the melody to get in the way. At the beginning of the lecture, I mentioned that syncopation is a tool in the composer's toolbox. Another tool is word painting, and that's when you reflect the significance of the lyrics in the melody. And this song is an excellent example of that, because the only time in the song that Berlin gets away from a one note repeated over and over again melody is when he gets to tempest tossed, bringing the storm to life in the music. Send these, the homeless tempest tossed, to me. Now, while free from Russia, the Berlin's life in America was brutal. Moses Berlin, Irving's father, had been a cantor in Russia, and it is likely that his father was a cantor before him. As the chazan of his shul, he was a very, very big fish, even if in a very small pond. Now, any respect or admiration that he once commanded was gone. He was unable to get work as a cantor. For a while, he inspected kosher chickens, but mostly he and his family survived on menial work. Berlin had 7 brothers and sisters, and for a time, all 9 Berlins sold newspapers on a street. Soon, Moses's health began to fail, and in 1896, just 3 years after they arrived, he died. The Berlins, who had always been poor, now became desperate. At 8 years old, after only 2 years of school, Irving Berlin dropped out so that he could help support his family. Not long after this, Israel and Irving is the same. Not long after this, Israel ran away from home. But this was not some act of adolescent rebellion. He did it because as the youngest, he felt he could not do his share around the house. His big brothers would sell 20 newspapers and he only sold 10. He felt that he was a burden. So he ran away, but he only ran away a few blocks. And he slept in the streets or in flop houses and supported himself by selling newspapers or apples. Berlin lived in poverty for many years. Later, he wrote several songs about poverty, including Doing What Comes Naturally, or this one, Let's Have Another Cup of Coffee, and Let's Have Another Piece of Pie. These songs do not pander to poverty, and they don't praise it, as is the case with Berlin's music. In a direct, simple, understated manner, it simply acknowledges poverty. And in this song, acknowledges the fact that for a nickel, you could get an extra cup of coffee and another piece of pie at a time when that would be the absolute height of indulgence and pleasure. Though Berlin had practically no education, he was a cantor's child. He had been singing all of his life, and he knew the power of music. Soon he realized that he could make more money singing on the street corners than selling newspapers. He made friends of other street singers, and through them, in 1906, he got a job singing as a singing waiter at a notorious local bar, the Pelham's Cafe. Local hoodlums and gangsters frequented the bar. If a parody of a popular song that had lyrics that flattered the gangster's ego, the singer would get a big tip. Berlin soon excelled at coming up with funny and, frankly, very dirty parodies about the patrons. He grew up speaking Hebrew, Yiddish, and Russian. He had practically no schooling, but he was improvising witty and amusing lyrics in English. Aside from these spontaneous parodies, he also started experimenting with actual songwriting. With another waiter, he wrote his first song, Marie from Sunny Italy, in 1907, and he received a royalty of 33 cents. For the next 4 years, Irving Berlin continued to work at the bar, which gave him daily practice at improvising and lyric writing. At this time, ragtime music was extremely popular. In 1911, Berlin's years of singing, experimenting, and improvising paid off. He wrote the song that would launch his career and change his life, Alexander's Ragtime Band. Today, it is impossible to appreciate what a remarkable accomplishment Alexander's Ragtime Band is. The song is so familiar that we probably have never really thought about it critically. But let's think about it now. When we were talking about Scott Joplin, we said that the compositional tool cannot simply be plugged in. It has to grow naturally out of the melody. Alexander's Ragtime Band is a great melody with perfect syncopation. It is lively and animated. Without syncopation, the song would be come on and hear, but with syncopation, come on and hear, bringing the melody to life. Skillful use of syncopation is not the only sign of Berlin's budding genius. First, the verse and the chorus are in 2 different keys, and it's a modulation to the subdominant key. Now, that's really not a big deal. Any good composer would do that on a daily basis. But for a pop tune in the early 1900s, written by a person with absolutely no training, it is a little bit of an accomplishment. Also, what is really impressive is how gracefully and effortlessly he incorporates other material into his song. When he sings, "If you care to hear old Swanee River played in ragtime," listen to that melody again. "If you want to hear the Swanee River played in ragtime," that is the actual Stephen Foster song. "Way down upon the Swanee River, played in ragtime." He actually takes the melody of the Stephen Foster song and weaves it right into his tune. When he sings about the bugle call, he does the same thing. "So natural that you want to go to war." As with the syncopation, these quotes of pre-existing melodies don't hit you over the head. They are seamlessly woven into the melody. Stephen Sondheim went to Princeton and Columbia. He studied with some of the 20th century's greatest musicians, including Leonard Bernstein, Milton Babbitt, and Oscar Hammerstein. If he were to write a song with this kind of sophistication, you would be impressed, but you would not be surprised. Alexander's Ragtime Band, however, was written by a Yiddish-speaking elementary school dropout with absolutely no musical training. Alexander's Ragtime Band did not become a hit because it was in a movie or in the radio. In 1911, those things did not exist. It became a hit because it has a joyous, infectious melody that people could not stop singing. And so, you're all going to sing it now. And again, I can't hear you, so I just hope you're all singing it. Here we go. Come on in here, come on in here, Alexander's Ragtime Band. Come on in here, come on in here, it's the best band in the land. They can play a bugle call like you never done before, so natural that you want to go to war. It's just the bestest band, what Honeyland, come on along, let me take you by the hand. Up to the man, who's the leader of the band. And if you care to hear the Swanee River played in the ragtime, come on in here, Alexander's Ragtime Band. Okay, I'm trusting that you're singing. Alexander's Ragtime Band sold 1.5 million copies, and that's when the population of our country was a fraction of what it is now. 1.5 million copies of sheet music were sold within the first 18 months. It was the first time in history that an American song became an international hit. And needless to say, it transformed Irving Berlin's life. Overnight, he became an in-demand composer, and now another of Berlin's many attributes appeared: his amazing prolificness and his complete inability to get nervous when put under pressure. After Alexander's band, Florence Ziegfeld and other top entertainers quickly came calling. You got a telegram from Florence Ziegfeld saying, "Write me a song now." It takes a certain amount of poise to respond to that. The neophyte composer could have become a one-hit wonder, but he responded by composing in quick and seemingly effortless succession a long list of successful songs. During his 60-year career, Irving Berlin wrote approximately 1,500 songs, including the scores to 20 Broadway shows and 15 Hollywood films. As a savvy businessman, he printed his own music, and the Irving Berlin Music Company still exists today. He also created the Composers Union, ASCAP, which still exists today, and he built his own theater, the Music Box, which still stands today. Berlin's career dates back to the days of piano rolls and sheet music, but Berlin had the flexibility to adapt to every innovation and the talent to stay ahead of the curve. When music went from piano rolls to phonographs and then to radio, his music was there. 1928 saw the innovation of what would become an entirely new art form, the Hollywood musical. And Berlin was there right from the inception of this new medium. When Al Jolson sings in the very first talkie, in the very first movie musical in history, it was an Irving Berlin song that he sang. So I'm just going to close this out and bring this up. And this is Irving Berlin's Blue Skies. Now we're going to talk about Blue Skies later, but right now let's just enjoy Al Jolson. Okay, there we go. Now, if you've seen The Jazz Singer, you know it is understandably primitive. After all, it was the very, very first talkie. And so while it's a fun movie and an important movie, it's not really a great movie. "18 months later, Berlin made his second talkie, putting on the Ritz. It is a lot better, but it's still really not a great movie. And Irving Berlin was not at all happy with the result. But you're familiar with the song, spending every dime for a wonderful time. So if you're spending every dime for a wonderful time, are you guaranteed happiness? This song, which could be a mindless celebration of hedonism, for some reason stays fresh. What makes a song which is now 92 years old and a fluff piece that is ostensibly about just getting dressed stay relevant? Well, first of all, the syncopation in this song.
Ken? Uh-oh. I think we lost Ken. Let me see if I can get him back. Okay, yeah, we did lose him. I'm going to get him back on here as soon as possible. I do apologize about that. But of course, as we know, the internet can be unstable. I appreciate your patience. Just bear with us here real quick and we'll get back on our way.
Okay, everybody, can you just wave if you can hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, good. So we did obviously lose everybody there for a second. Let me get everything back. All right. Oh, actually, no. 1 second.
Hello. Please leave a message after the tone.
Let me... Jonathan, how do I bring my window back up so I can see myself?
You should have the option in the bottom with the share screen when you do that.
That's right. There we go. Share screen. Share. Perfect. Thank you for reminding me.
No problem.
Okay. And presentation mode. Okay, we're back. Again, now I can see Jan Groves. Jan Groves, would you just wave if you can hear me? Okay, we're moving on. All right. Thank you. Anyway, so this is a fluff piece. It's a song about getting dressed. You'd expect it to be in a major key. And if it was in a major key, it would sound like this. If you're blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits? Putting on the Ritz. Different types wear a day coat, pants with stripes. But it's not in a major key, it's in a minor key. So instead of if you're blue, it's if you're blue. And the harmony is more depressing. If you're blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits? Putting on the Ritz. So instead of putting on the Ritz, it's putting on the Ritz. Is the minor key Berlin's way of showing us that there are limits to a superficial life? Think Daisy Buchanan from The Great Gatsby. She could have been written as just another shallow flapper, but Fitzgerald builds her into a complete and complex character. Putting on the Ritz also could have been just another fluff piece from the Jazz Age, but instead it is another example of Berlin's subtle and understated craftsmanship. Putting on the Ritz was composed in 1928, but now we're going to go back to 1912 and catch up on some of Berlin's personal life. At the time of Alexander's Ragtime Band, Berlin, right here I'm pointing to this fellow, E. Ray Getz, Berlin became good friends with Getz, who is now mostly remembered for The Bells Are Ringing for Me and My Gal. Getz was from Buffalo, New York. His sister, Dorothy, was also a very talented musician and singer. Berlin was smitten with Dorothy Getz, and the two were married in 1912. Unfortunately, their love was tragic and short. They went to Havana on their honeymoon, and while in Havana, Dorothy caught typhoid. She died shortly thereafter. Within a matter of a month and a half, Berlin went from being a newlywed to a widow. For the first time, Berlin had writer's block. He was devastated and could not compose anything. Berlin had always written light, fun songs, and it was Ray Getz, who was still and would be a lifelong friend, who encouraged him not to be afraid to write a song about what he was actually feeling. By 1912, Berlin had published almost 130 songs, but it was not until When I Lost You that he revealed his ability to compose with honesty about his own pain. How many of you are familiar with this song? If you are, again, please sing it. It was quite popular. There's Bing Crosby recordings of it. There's Fred Astaire recordings of it, which of course, all came much later. The song was written in 1912, so it was popular at that time, but then it remained popular for many, many years. Hey, here we go. I lost the sunshine and roses. I lost the heavens of blue. I lost the beautiful rainbow. I lost the morning dew. I lost the angel who gave me summer the whole winter through. I lost the gladness that turned into sadness when I lost you. Focusing on his work, Berlin did not have much of a social life for many years. He was always known to be disciplined. How else do you have a career with over 1,500 songs? Back in his days at the Pelham Cafe, Berlin was surrounded with prostitutes and gangsters, and his time on Broadway was the era of the Ziegfeld Girl. When he went to Hollywood, he was in the world of casting couches. His music was the staple of speakeasies during the Prohibition. He was in a world where it was very easy to be led astray. From Alexander's Ragtime Band in 1911 all the way until his death in 1989, almost 80 years living in the fishbowl of public life, there are no scandals in his biography, no events that he ever needed to apologize for. When he did achieve wealth, he did not take on an opulent lifestyle. His first major expense was to purchase an apartment for his widowed mother. He would visit her every Friday night for Shabbos dinner until her death in 1924. Except for When I Lost You, the song we just sang, Berlin was quite private and never opened up about the backstory of any of his compositions. And while he never admitted it, it is very strongly believed that the song What'll I Do was in fact written in honor of his mother's passing. And I just want to point out on the sheet music, this little handle right here. Now, I only see the faces of a few people who are watching right now, but I can tell that a lot of you would be old enough to remember what that little knob there was for on the side of a Victrola. Anyway, let's now sing What'll I Do? But notice the title. It is not What Will I Do? It is not What Shall I Do? It is What'll I Do? this is a song I really hope most of you know. Here we go. What'll I do when you are far away and I am blue? What'll I do? What'll I do when I am wondering who is kissing you? What'll I do? What'll I do with just a photograph to tell my troubles to? When I'm alone with only dreams of you that won't come true, what'll I do? So while there are no skeletons in his closet, there was one event that did have Irving Berlin on the front pages of the newspapers around the world. 8 years after the death of his first wife, it was Berlin's courtship and marriage to his second wife, Ellen Mckay. Ellen Mckay was one of the wealthiest women in America. Her father, John Mckay, discovered the Comstock lode, the largest silver deposit in the world. But if that didn't make him wealthy enough, he also owned a gold mine. The immigrant experiences of John Mckay and Irving Berlin are remarkably similar. Mckay came to America one generation before Berlin, but both grew up penniless. Mckay in the slums of Dublin and Berlin in a Russian shtetl. Both came with nothing but the clothes on their back. Both sold newspapers to support their families. Both lost their fathers at an early age. Both became wealthier than their wildest dreams through determination, hard work, skill, and then also luck. Mckay, however, earned his fortune one generation before Berlin. And Mckay came from Christian Western Europe and not Jewish Eastern Europe. And in his mind, that gave him all the license needed to look down upon the Russian upstart. The Mckays lived in the most rarefied elements of Long Island society. Ellen's posh and educated background is highlighted by the story of their first meeting. Ellen introduced herself to Irving Berlin at a party, and when she did, she said, "Oh, Mr. Berlin, I just love that new song you wrote. What shall I do?" Berlin politely replied, "Well, when it comes to grammar, I can always use a little help." Clarence was vehemently opposed to his debutante daughter marrying this upstart Jew. He did everything he could to keep them away from each other. He gave lavish parties inviting the most desirable available men, including the Prince of Wales. Though these parties were specifically intended to make Ellen forget Berlin, the band inevitably would be playing Irving Berlin's music. And he spared no expense. They hired the Paul Whiteman Band. And if you know jazz history, you know the Paul Whiteman Band. Clarence then sent her away on a year-long tour of Europe. But while they were apart, they realized just how much they missed each other. The song Always came from this separation. And I hope you all know this song. Let's sing it. And here we go. I'll be loving you always with a love that's true always. When the Lend me a helping hand, I will understand always, always. Days may not be fair, always. That's when I'll be there, always. Not for just an hour, not for just a day, not for just a year, but always. Mckay made it clear that if Ellen married Berlin, he would disown her and completely cut her out of his inheritance. Berlin did not want to destroy the relationship between Ellen and her father, so he agreed to break off the relationship. But they loved each other and really missed each other. Finally, Irving called Ellen one morning, and they agreed to very quickly meet at City Hall. As quietly as possible, the two were married and then ran to a waiting taxi to take them to Atlantic City. 2 days later, they boarded a cruise to Europe. They sailed to Europe. Mckay kept his vow to cut out his daughter. Clarence and Ellen hardly saw each other until he died. However, Irving and Ellen, by all accounts, had a very happy marriage. They remained together until Ellen died in 1988, with Irving dying 1 year later. Of course, a happy marriage does not mean a trouble-free marriage. The rushed wedding spread speculation that Ellen was already pregnant. The painful separation from Clarence and the challenges of celebrity life in a fishbowl and the constant ridicule at a time when a mixed marriage was universally condemned were very difficult for the newlyweds. Irving was used to the life of a celebrity, but Ellen found the sudden onslaught of paparazzi and gossip difficult. However, late in November of 1926, the Berlins welcomed their first child, Mary Ellen. The tabloids were disappointed because Mary Ellen was born 11 months after the wedding. The baby was born on a sunny day. Irving Berlin walked out of Beverly Hills Hospital on the day that Mary was born, and he looked up and he saw a beautiful blue sky. He took that as an omen that perhaps the challenges of the first year would be behind them and their life was improved. And it was then, that afternoon, that he wrote Blue Skies, which of course we already listened to when Al Jolson sang. I am always amazed how a man with absolutely no schooling and no knowledge of English could still remember intricacies of our language that makes a blue day a bad thing, but a blue sky a good thing. Blue days, all of them gone, nothing but blue skies from now on. Like Putting on the Ritz, the song surprisingly is in a minor key. Also, since the song was written for their newborn daughter, Mary Ellen, it is considered to be the most famous birth announcement in history. 2 years later, on December 1st, 1928, Irving and Ellen had their first son, a boy named Irving Jr. Tragically, just 3 weeks later, on Christmas Day, their son died. Berlin's devastation was made only worse by speculation in the tabloids that his death was divine retribution for marrying out of the faith. We will talk about White Christmas later, but as you know, it is a song with no ho-ho-hos and no jingle-jingle jingles. It has been speculated that one reason why Berlin wrote such a somber Christmas song is because for the Berlins, Christmas Day would be forever the anniversary of their son's death. We saw how early talkies were stiff and awkward, and that Berlin's time in Hollywood was unsatisfying. After Putting on the Ritz, Berlin left Hollywood and returned to Broadway, and he wrote what was by far his most powerful show to date, As Thousands Cheer. Thousands Cheer is a musical recreation of a newspaper, and I can see the faces of most of you listening that you guys are actually old enough to know what a newspaper is. There was a song about the weather report in the newspaper. Heat wave, a tropical heat wave. There was a song about the comics. Now, rotogravure was cutting-edge technology in 1930. Roto as in round and round like a printing press, and gravure as in engraving. Rotogravure was the technology that allowed newspapers to have picture pages. And I imagine some of you are old enough to remember a time when newspapers and magazines had all the pictures in one section or on just one or two pages. You couldn't have photographs spread throughout the newspaper or magazine. And this is a picture of the Easter parade. It is the rotogravure that allowed the son of a cantor to write the most famous Easter song of all time. On the avenue, Fifth Avenue, the photographers will snap us, and you'll find that you're in the rotogravure. Now imagine in 1933, the era of Florence Ziegfeld, just how elaborate and beautiful and lavish the original Broadway staging of the Easter parade must have been. But Thousands Cheer was not just fluff. Our musical newspaper will now go to the front page, where the hard news is. We see the story of a woman who has cooked supper for her family. Her children are eating, but her husband is not going to be coming home. He has been lynched. Like When I Lost You, Supper Time demonstrates Berlin was more than just the composer of light tunes and patriotic jingles. Ethel Waters sang the original Supper Time in the Broadway production, and let's listen.
Summertime.
Okay, I apologize. We really didn't get to hear very much of the song. I do want to move on, though. As you know, with gee, how do I get? Oh, I have to go back to screen sharing.
You are sharing your screen. If you just go down to the bottom where you see your little Google Chrome icon, just go ahead and click on that icon.
Okay, and now I
should
need to
have
go
your
back to
visit
slides. Yeah, and thank you very much. Presentation mode. All right. As you know, with YouTube, there's commercials and stuff, so I wanted to skip ahead so that you didn't hear the commercials in the introduction, but I obviously skipped ahead too far. I apologize, but you know, you can all go back and listen to the song. It is quite remarkable. As I have said before, Berlin was understated. He does not discuss in the song racism or politics. Instead, he focuses on the immediate and universal act of cooking. And that brings the act of a lynching into our homes. Thousands Cheer was written in 1933. And by that time, Hollywood had had some time to get the kinks out of their system. And so in 1935, which was 5 years after the movie Putting on the Ritz, Berlin went back to Hollywood. And then he was able to write what would be the best Hollywood musical up until that time. Top Hat. No matter how successful a Broadway show is, it still can only be seen by a few thousand people a week. A movie, however, can reach millions. And as a result, many of the songs that we think of when we think of Irving Berlin's song are the songs that he wrote for the movies during this time. Top Hat also cemented a lifelong friendship between Fred Astaire and Irving Berlin. The two men were remarkably similar in terms of their work ethic and professionalism. Both men were enormously successful, but they continued long after they really needed to work very hard and meticulously try to perfect every detail in their work long after they really needed to. For years, the two would eat dinner together and play cards together at least once a week. Whoops, skipped a picture. There we go. Just days after the 9/11 attack, Bruce Springsteen wrote a song called The Rising. The song is about a firefighter who enters the wreckage to remove the injured. As he pulls up the victims, he rises them from the rubble. Quickly, it is clear that rising is not just about the physical act of pulling up the injured. The song skillfully does three things simultaneously. It honors the victims, it honors the first responders, but then it also, because of the metaphor of rising, it gives inspiration to the millions and millions of people who were left after the attack to deal with the world and its change. It is an example of music moving beyond entertainment to take on a greater purpose, to honor, to comfort, and to inspire. Today, most modern audiences do not remember that in 1941, as America was entering World War II, White Christmas also served to comfort, heal, and inspire. The distance between Christmas of 1940 and Christmas of 1941 is enormous. Christmas of 1940 saw America at peace, and most Americans proudly isolationist. By Christmas of 1941, Pearl Harbor was in flames, and America was at war. Men who never traveled from home were being shipped out to the South Pacific or North Africa. Women were moving into arms manufacturing. Change, upheaval, and anxiety were everywhere. Christmas 1941 came just 2 weeks after the attack on Pearl Harbor. On live radio on Christmas Day, Bing Crosby sang the world premiere of White Christmas. Just 17 days after the attack, he is singing a song about a Christmas just like the ones we used to know. A Christmas like last year, when we were still at peace. I have said several times in this talk that Berlin's music may not be as flashy as some of his contemporaries, but within its subtle understatement is his great talent. It is hard to imagine any song in history that gave voice to the fears and hopes of so many people as did White Christmas in December of 1941. Look at the lyrics. They are not about Christmas. Today we forget, but in 1941, a completely secular Christmas song was unusual. Today we are used to the idea of a Christmas song that actually has nothing to do with Christmas, but instead is about Santa Claus or Rudolph or mistletoe. These songs were all written after White Christmas was written. White Christmas was a song that all Americans could sing at a time when all Americans were asked to sacrifice. So if White Christmas is not about Christmas, what is it about? I think it is about yearning, nostalgia, and home. As I've said before, it is remarkable that someone who grew up not speaking English can write lyrics that are so balanced. They're nostalgic, but not pandering. They're melancholy, but not morose. They are sentimental, but not saccharine. And remember, Irving Berlin's only son died on Christmas Day. And yet the lyrics are tranquil, but not laden with self-pity. Also remember that in 1941, most GIs would personally identify with a white, snowy Christmas. More Americans lived in northern cities in 1941 than they do now. Cities like Dallas, Atlanta, Miami, Orlando, Las Vegas were all a fraction of what they are now. And cities like Detroit, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, and other Rust Belt cities were all much, much larger. Also, and this is really significant, because of the universal draft, the military's population reflected the population of the actual country. Most people came from northern cities. Most people related to a white Christmas. But not only were most soldiers used to snow, they were going to places where there was none. Major fighting in Europe was still years away. In 1941, soldiers were going to North Africa or to the South Pacific, places that were alien, exotic, and literally on the opposite side of the earth. The longing for a white Christmas symbolizes something far more than a sleigh ride or a Currier and Ives print. It is a longing for home. So this song captured a yearning that people felt. But does it do more than just capture a mood? Remember, Irving Berlin was the son of a cantor. He knew that music was about more than entertainment. Music could heal. So what type of song is specifically designed to calm and soothe someone who is upset, someone in need of tranquility? Now, those of you who are here right at the beginning of the lecture, before the lecture already began, you already know the answer to this question. What is a song that is especially soothing? Most everything that I am sharing with you today is things that I have read in books written by people who are smarter and more knowledgeable than I. Thousands Cheer by Bergen, and a book that I especially recommend, a book written by Irving Berlin's daughter, the woman for whom Blue Skies was written, Mary Ellen Barrett. What I'm about to share with you, I did not read in any book. This is just my own theory, and so it could be complete nonsense, and likely is. But I think that White Christmas is actually a lullaby in disguise, a lullaby for a nation in torment. Just look at the first line of the song. I'm dreaming. But beyond the lyrics, the music itself is reminiscent of a lullaby. It is only 32 measures long, and it's in 4/4 time. And of all the things on this list, the most significant is that of the 54 words in the song, 44 of them are one-syllable words. And that means that the man who made a living for 60 years writing syncopated songs now, because of all these one-syllable words, is locked into quarter note, quarter note, quarter note, just like the ones I used to know. And again, to those of you who are here right on time or even a minute early, what note do you think White Christmas starts on? It starts on the third note, mi. 3 of the first 5 notes of the song are E natural, and all of the first 6 notes of the song are either an E or just a semitone away. This is especially noticeable. You're going from an E to an F, which is a semitone, and then back to E, but then you don't go to a D natural, you go to a D sharp, which is what in music theory we call a neighbor tone, forcing you right back to the E again. Berlin is definitely emphasizing that median note. Imagine some 18-year-old from Peoria who in November of 1941 was drinking malts with his girl, but then in December he's off to boot camp and then God knows where. After a difficult day of basic training, he could not go back to his barracks and say, gee, I sure wish my mom was here to sing me a song and wish me good night. So while he certainly couldn't say that, it doesn't mean that he wasn't thinking it. And so now I will sing White Christmas for you, but I will sing it with all new lyrics that I wrote just for this lecture. These are not the real lyrics. I simply made them up to illustrate the point. And that point is that even with the words completely changed, White Christmas still has the spirit of tranquility. The music itself functions as a lullaby, calming a nation at a time of war. So I'm going to sing this now. Now, you've never seen these words before, but God knows you all know the tune. So I invite you to sing along. Sweet child, now it's time to sleep. Lie down and close your weary eyes. We will tuck you in and we'll kiss your chin and we'll dream of you through the night. Sweet child, now it's time to sleep. Our weary day must now end. As you sleep, all our love we will keep. And may all your dreams you dream be sweet. White Christmas is not the song of a virgin birth, or is it a song about the Son of God come to earth? It is a song of connection to a shared sense of home and place. And in that sense, in its ability to connect us to something larger than ourselves, it is a religious song after all. As I said, White Christmas was introduced on live radio by Bing Crosby on Christmas Day of 1941. A few months later, the movie Holiday Inn reintroduced the song. By October of 1942, White Christmas was the #1 hit in the nation. It remained there through all of October, November, December, and January. And then the exact same thing happened in 1943, 1944, and 1945. It is the only time in history that the same song topped the charts in different years. It became by far the most requested song on Armed Forces Radio and at USOs for generations. Crosby's White Christmas sold 50 million copies, and the population of the country at the time was only 150 million. 1 out of 3 people bought the record. And of course, back then you had extended families, and you didn't have a situation today like where everybody has their own TV in their own bedroom. You would have 2 or 3 generations living in one house with one radio and one record player, and yet still you had 1 out of every 3 people buying the record. When recordings by other singers are added in, White Christmas sold well over 100 million copies. It is the most recorded piece of music of all time, including anything by the Beatles or Elvis. And since now most music is downloaded, it is a record that will never be broken. Bing Crosby once said that the hardest thing he ever did in show business was in December of 1944. He was touring with Bob Hope and the Andrews Sisters at a USO show, and he sang White Christmas to 100,000 GIs who were all in tears, and Crosby had to somehow not cry himself. Within a week of that concert, thousands of those boys would be killed at the Battle of the Bulge. Whoops, excuse me. Berlin was 53 years old when World War II started. He had already served in the Army during World War I, and he was under no obligation to do anything for World War II. But as I said, his love of country was deep and genuine. Yip, Yip, Yap Hank was an all-soldier show that was written during World War I. And it is from Yip, Yip, Yap Hank that we have the song, "Oh, How I Hate to Get Up in the Morning." For World War II, Berlin again created an all-soldier show. This is the Army, Mr. Jones. It ran on Broadway, went on a national tour, became a movie, toured the European theater, and toured the Pacific theater. The show raised what today would be over $300 million, and all profits were given to Army relief. Every performer in the show was actually a member of the Army, including a group of black soldiers. There was a lot of pressure on Irving Berlin to remove the song with the black singers, but Berlin insisted on keeping the song and those performers in the show. When these African-American soldiers took the stage to perform, it was the very first time in our country's history that the United States Army was integrated. Performances were often only a few miles from the front. As the war dragged on, Berlin was approaching 60, and 60 was a lot older back then. He toured around the world, performing for almost 3 years. And for those of you who remember Carole Lombard and Glenn Miller, you know that entertaining for the military, even if you're not in combat, was still dangerous work. When the war ended, Berlin was exhausted. It was universally accepted that he would retire. And why wouldn't he? What more could he accomplish? He had brought himself up to the pinnacle of American popular song. He had excelled in every form: ragtime, swing, big band, jazz, ballads, love songs, novelty songs, pop, patriotic songs, and religious music. He wrote music for player pianos, Broadway theaters, Hollywood movies, and radio. He had toured the world. Of course, there was nothing for him to accomplish, and it was time for him to retire to his beloved home in Lew Beach. And I want to thank the people of Monticello and the Monticello Library for making this talk possible. And as you are all neighbors of Lew Beach, you can take pride in how much he truly loved his time spent there. And as I said a minute ago, a book that I really enjoyed was the book written by his daughter. And in it, she does speak about how much the happiest times that she saw her father were the times spent in Lew Beach. So that was the plan in 1945. He would spend the rest of his life fishing. And in 1945, the plan was that he would spend the rest of his life fishing in Lew Beach. But in 1946, he would create perhaps his greatest show, Annie, Get Your Gun. Now, I'm a retired teacher, and I've been retired for a couple of years, so I don't get to give homework assignments very much. But now I'm going to give all of you a homework assignment. Go see Annie, Get Your Gun. But more importantly, take your children and grandchildren. Of course, Ethel Merman is long gone. The Betty Hutton movie is It's not terrible. In it, the Native Americans are depicted in a way that is painful for modern audiences. And also in the Betty Hutton movie, Annie Oakley loses a shooting competition on purpose so as not to disappoint her boyfriend, Frank Butler. Now, the real Annie Oakley would never lose on purpose. And the real Frank Butler would not have wanted her to. In real life, Annie and Frank had a very long and very happy marriage, and everybody knew that Annie Oakley was the better shot. About 20 years ago, Annie Get Your Gun was revived with Bernadette Peters. They removed the material that was offensive to Native Americans, and they also changed the ending to allow Annie Oakley to do what she did in real life, which was be the champion and still get to marry Frank. Since then, this new version has been performed with some regularity. So your homework assignment is to find a production of the show and take your children and grandchildren. Even the most jaded teen will be impressed with Annie Get Your Gun. It is literally one fantastic song after another. The girl that I married, I've got the sun in the morning and the moon at night. They say that falling in love is wonderful. You can't get a man with a gun. Doing what comes naturally. Anything you can do, I can do better. And of course, there's no business like show business. If you have children or grandchildren who like to play soccer, or I'm sorry, if you have daughters or granddaughters who like to play soccer or lacrosse, or perhaps you have a daughter who likes to play rugby, they owe a great debt to the real Annie Oakley. She was the first professional female athlete in history. Without Annie Oakley, there may have never been a Martina Navratilova or a Serena Williams. After Annie Get Your Gun, Irving Berlin had fewer and fewer successes. Miss Liberty in 1949 and Call Me Madam in 1950 were modest success. But post-war America was changing. Now, Irving Berlin had always been able to keep up. When we went from ragtime to jazz to swing to big band, he always could keep up with the change. But now things were really changing in a way that he could not adapt to. Well, actually, that's not true, that he just didn't want to. After he died, his daughter did find rock music that Irving Berlin wrote, but he never published it or submitted it. He wrote it for his own amusement, but he just didn't like it, was really the big issue. And also, not just the music, but the world was changing. The profoundly patriotic Berlin could just not sympathize or understand the protests and the politics of the 60s. His last musical, written in 1962, was Mr. President, and it's the story of a very young and handsome president and a gorgeous and glamorous first lady who move into the White House. Written in 1962. Who do you think it's about? Two guesses. Now, unfortunately, Mr. President is a bad show. Critics panned it mercilessly. And after that, Berlin wrote very little. However, Berlin lived all the way until 1989, long enough that he saw, at least in his own mind, his music becoming increasingly irrelevant, and he became something of a recluse. In 1988, a sold-out Carnegie Hall celebrated his 100th birthday, and the biggest stars of the day were all there, but Irving Berlin chose not to attend. So your homework assignment is not just to take your grandchildren to go see Annie Get Your Gun, but to also teach them about Irving Berlin. Among the young, he is becoming all but forgotten. And in that way, he is very much like Stephen Foster. People know songs like Oh, Susanna and Camptown Ladies Sing This Song, but they don't necessarily know who wrote those songs. People know God Bless America and White Christmas, but they don't necessarily know who wrote them either. And the comparison to Stephen Foster is sad, but also terribly ironic, because it was Stephen Foster's Way Down Upon the Swanee River that launched and made possible Irving Berlin's career. So, teach your children and grandchildren about the Jew who wrote White Christmas and Easter Parade, about the Russian who wrote God Bless America, and about the penniless refugee who became the success of both Broadway and Hollywood. When Israel Berlin sailed into the New York harbor in 1893, America was not an economic, cultural, or military power.
Ken, did we lose you again? I'm going to see if I can get Ken back. Bear with us just a moment. I appreciate your patience. We're still trying to get Ken back on the line. We're still trying to reach Ken. We're going to give him a couple of minutes, and if we can't get him, we'll have to end the presentation, but we're still going to wait for him just a couple more minutes. should be able to unmute, Ken.
Yeah, now I did. I was actually trying to write you a letter saying that you had me muted and I couldn't unmute myself. All right, I don't know what happened there. That's terrible because we're right at the conclusion. Anyway, what I was saying is that we're going to end with this recording. Now, I hope you can all hear me, but Ethel Merman is 60, Judy Garland is in her 40s, and Barbra Streisand is in her 20s. And so it is proof that Irving Berlin was wrong when he said that his music was becoming irrelevant, that his music has the ability to span all generations. And it is my hope that it continues to do just that. So we'll listen to this, and then that'll be the end. And I just want to thank so many of you for coming.
Is it possible to strengthen the bladder by practicing holding in the urge to
Yeah, we can see you, Ken, but we don't have the screen.
So you can see me?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, that is the conclusion.
Okay.
And so I just thank all of you. And you were able to see Ethel Merman and Judy Garland?
We did not.
You didn't see the music that I just played?
No.
Oh,
We just saw you.
I just closed it. I can try to bring it up again. All right, let me bring up the link again. That's so unfortunate. When the computer crashed, I closed every available window, hoping that that would get things back. And so now I have to reopen YouTube.
Understood.
Hopefully it won't take too long. Let's see if we can bring it up here. All right. Oh, you know what? I did not hit the screen share button.
Yeah.
All right. Let me go back to Zoom. All right. Share screen. All right. And now can you see Ethel Merman, Judy Garland, and Barbra Streisand?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. All right, so I'm just going to say what I said before, that Berlin, towards the end of his life, became a bit of a recluse, feeling that his music was no longer reaching different generations. However, even though Judy Garland and Ethel Merman looked the same age, as you know, Judy Garland had troubles in her life. Ethel Merman is almost 20 years older, so she's near 60, and Judy Garland is only in her young 40s, and Barbra Streisand is barely 20. So you literally have three different generations here, all being brought together by an Irving Berlin song. And it is very much my hope that that can continue to happen. And before I play the clip, let me just once again thank all of you for coming, and I apologize for the technical problem right there at the end, but let's enjoy what really is a pretty remarkable video here. Okay, again, thank you. If anybody has any questions, I mean, we've been here for over an hour and a half. I imagine some of you want to go eat dinner, but if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to stick around for a minute.
Yeah, we're gonna have to close out for the night. We're running late, so.
Okay.
If anybody has any questions, you can send them to my email, and I'll forward them on to Ken. If that
Sounds
works
good.
for you, Ken.
Absolutely.
So I'll go ahead and put my email in the chat box, as well as let you know what it is in case you're listening. It's jsager, J-S-A-G-E-R, at rcls.org. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and thank you, Ken, for coming out. And, you know, everyone, I appreciate you sticking with us through all the technical glitches, but I hope you enjoyed, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank-
everyone.
Bye-bye.